Their games, performances, and websites explore the intimacies of infrastructures, the labor of tools, and the poetics of machines from the domestic to the divine. They organized Develop PH towards poetic technologies in the Philippines. So without further ado, Chia.
Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for the applause. I'm so honored to be moderating this panel on creating the digital mythologies with artists whose practices I greatly admire. Obviously, all of our work thinks about new media, new technologies, world building, and the narratives around technology, either the construction of them or the dismantling of them. In particular, I was happy to meet Keb, who mixes augmented reality with traditional paintings inspired by video game worlds, and we are both gamers. And Tona, who interrogates image making, where perhaps building a world is simply altering one's perception of reality. And Chris, who I met, who I had the pleasure of working with in bringing Kaka Computer Man here, who thinks about tropical futurisms and imagining alternative and distributed ways of representing the tropics and bringing new forms of technology to traditional spaces. We'll do a round of introductions, and then we're going to dive into questions. Oh, and Chris is here. Can he hear us? I'm assuming yes. Awesome. Will we have the slides up next time? Yeah, okay. Let's do a round of introductions. Now that Chris is on board. Okay, yeah, super briefly, I'm an internet artist. If you heard a lot of noise and a ruckus downstairs, that's because of Kaka Computer Man. I'm the programmer behind it. It's an anthology of net art, a field that originated in the 90s that we are now bringing in a very disruptive way. It was originally supported by Rhizome and the New Museum. I'm so happy to bring it here for its fourth showing. And aside from that, I work with websites mainly in the form of performances, games, and installations, and they look like that.
So I do work that revolves around video, sculpture, and installation, also print. So this is one of the works that I showed in Drawing Room for my first solo exhibition. Basically, I trained the dataset on portraits of paid trolls from the internet. I trained the machine learning program to generate fake portraits based on those images. And this is what came out. So I chose to display the light box in front of the .json file. So the image on the right is what we call the .json file. It's basically like binary codes, all numbers. But it's also an image. So it's that kind of thing. So I chose to show them alongside. And this is a work that I started based off that first series. So it's currently on view in Ateneo Art Gallery. It's a room. When you go inside the room, it's really dark, save for a spotlight that highlights one face at a time. I worked with a sound designer named Marty Garci Cruz and a technical director, Martin Miranda. So what we did, we wanted the light, sounds, and images to speak to each other. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Apex Twin. Like he would have songs that hide his face. Like so his face is in the waveform. So similarly, these images are literally in the audio that can be heard at the time. This is a sculpture work that was shown in Drawing Room. So the ball's main frame follows the World Wide Web logo. So this is another machine learning model trained on stone tablets. So the stone tablets I found had different languages, but when the model generated its own images, started to invent its own language. So I don't know, I don't understand what's on them anymore, but it's interesting. And these are prints of the images. And this is another, it's not exactly a video work, so it's like a form of illusion that was common during the Victorian era, and I think now they use it in Disney World and like for practical effects, like in some movies, like low budget movies. Basically, it's not a hologram; it's like a physical press. It's a reflection, but it appears like a ghost-like figure.
Hi. Hi, I'm Keb. Thanks for having me, AFP. So, my work involves around AR. I often mix traditional with the digital. So, I traverse between those worlds. So, yeah. So, no clicker. Okay. So here, in my latest project called Dopamine Dash, this project is a motion-based game that is projected onto a painting. So this project reflects on the um, the dopamine-driven cycle of social media. The it revolves around our chase of these digital hugs, these digital currencies of affirmation, validation. So yeah. So may video. Yeah. So basically, the players need to grab positive social media reactions while avoiding different ones, and the negative ones, while keeping their dopamine meter filled. So as the game progresses, this dopamine meter depletes quickly and quickly, much like our um, building of tolerance of this dopamine hits. So that's the design of social media. We crave more and more of this digital affirmation. So so this project is called Atomic Blob naman. So I made an arcade cabinet and designed the game inside. The game is a shoot 'em up. May video ba? So, yan, may plane. So, it's a shoot 'em up game. It's a classic game design that, but the message reflects on the um, romanticization of violence through media, through modern media. So, yun. So,
Well, if Chris joins, Chris is an amazing curator. He's behind the Tropical Futures Institute, and he also had curated the 2021 edition of Art Fair Philippines Digital section, and then he did 2022's Art Dubai Digital. He's also behind Tropical Futures Institute, which is a brand, think tank, incubator, working on amazing artifacts, clothing, exhibitions, and other commissions related to the tropics. So hopefully he can join us in a sec, and I think we're going to move into questions that just kind of embrace these tensions between old and new, the lag and the glitchiness that we're all experiencing. I think we're going to be discussing that a lot. But yeah, this ultimately, I'm excited to kind of dive into how. Damn.
And then, as Chia mentioned, in terms of in the context of art, we recently curated.
Okay, so let's move into the first question. So I think I'm gonna essentially ask about each of your backgrounds and relationship with technology from the past and present. Each of you, of course, work at the intersection of these traditional and digital mediums and spaces. In a way, all of our practices also relate to myth building or myth breaking as well. So I'm curious, when you first started your practices, what was this so-called mythology or narrative around the digital sphere? Did you immediately want to dive into it? And then thinking forward to today, how do your practices attempt to alter our narratives about technology? So, yeah, what are your origin stories essentially with technology, and today, how do you approach it? Maybe we can start with Donna, and then Keb, and then we'll go to Chris.
Okay. So age-wise, I was born 1995, so we're the last millennials. So when I started using the internet or like the computer, it was like the age of LimeWire, the age of Angel Fire, the age of forums. So I think it was really something centered on community and trying to find like very niche interests and finding random people online who also like your niche interests. But slowly the internet evolved to be or maybe I grew older and realized that the internet is not exactly what I thought it was. It's like very U.S. military type thing. It's also capable of surveilling us. Like new technologies are usually heavily based on surveillance technology, surveillance, data-driven. I'll go on and on, but yeah. So I ended up working in advertising for quite some time, for a few years, and I think like how I see representation or how I see social media metrics is influenced by that heavily. Even the type of images I like. So I love horror movies, but I also like collecting glossy like fashion images. So usually the type of work I produce in the middle of all the new technology, but also in the middle of gloss and horror, something like that.
What about you, Keb?
Well, I'm video games. So yeah. So since childhood, like most kids, I was obsessed with video games. I spent countless hours of exploring these different worlds, like collecting coins. What do you call this? Basta. So I was so inspired with these worlds that even at a young age, I decided that I didn't just want to play them. I want to create one myself. So I think my first attempt on creating one before I could code or do anything digital, um, I draw mazes in my notebooks in elementary school. So, but not just any mazes. I would fill them with enemies, traps, secret passages. I remember I draw them with ink so that my classmates could solve them with a pencil. So once they finish or once they give up, I'd erase their path so someone else could try. So at that time, I didn't think of it as something special. But looking back, I realized that I wasn't just drawing for fun. I was designing these tiny worlds. So yeah, as I grew older, so yeah, fast forward, um, I, uh, I got serious about painting. And I thought, but my love for video games and creating these spaces, creating interactive experiences stuck with me. Then I saw AR tech, and I knew instantly that I could do something with it to integrate with my artwork. So, yeah, so one thing led to another. Um, I made my first playable painting, Super Nardo. So, yun. Does that make sense ba? So yun. Yun yung first attempt. Kaya yun yung history.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, gaming origin story I feel is resonant to many. Oh, did we lose Chris again? Oh yeah, if Chris, you can hear us. The question was around your narratives around technology, your origin stories with it, how you related to it growing up.
Yeah. So basically, I would say just growing up in land shops, I was just playing Counter-Strike and like all sorts of just games. That I would say that's really my first experience in the cyber cafe. I mean, and then eventually we got a computer at home. But I would say I really started going deep on technology, in my early 20s, and that was more around like innovation studies and then user research around certain technologies and hardware. So where I am today, I would say like a lot of the work was done just doing like anthropological work on people that or the word is the soft infrastructure, so the people that would comprise the network. So a lot so that sort of like brought me full circle in terms of community centralized networks, and then that eventually brought me into, I guess in particular, Bitcoin and other cryptos. And then through that, you're just sort of keeping abreast with innovation, and even to this day, like trying to shake off the keto vibes and keep up with the tech, So yeah.
Yeah, all of us, I mean, grew up inextricably linked to technology. It influenced our upbringings, and clearly all of our practices still are deeply involved with tech. But it seems like our general attitudes and feelings and perceptions about technology have changed. Like, Donna, you mentioned that in your earlier days of browsing forums and finding people with niche interests, it seemed like technology was generally more community oriented, but your recent work deals a lot with kind of like platforms and centralization, about trolls. It seems like the community that you remembered is no longer there. And similar to Keb, like obviously gaming has always held different connotations over the years, but now it feels very tied to like obsession and gambling and addiction. And Chris, it feels like these methods, these early methods of torrenting and distribution are getting more and more kind of like restricted, and now more than ever we need to find more decentralized ways of being and distributing and connecting with each other online. So from that past that we shared, I'm curious, like, what are the exact tensions around technology that you feel now that your work and practices tackle? Like, what is it about technology today that has changed?
For me, it's connected to one of Keb's work, I guess, like Dopamine Dash. I had one show, the title of the show was Proforma. So, most of the shows I'm more centered on images and like the layering of an image and why it's constructed, why we view it that way. But for that show, I wanted to look at the framework of new technologies in themselves, like the form itself. So a lot of social media stuff, a lot of new technologies, they're like black boxed. Like we don't exactly know how they work, but we feel the effects and we don't have any choice but to feel the effects. And I think with social media, it became a trend to also box people into certain identities. So there's this paper by Cambridge Analytica, same Cambridge Analytica that got involved with our elections. They say that if you like, for example, WWE, you must be heterosexual. If you like Juicy Couture, you must be homosexual. Like literally, there's a chart. Like if you like this on Facebook, you must be like this. So that kind of segregation. It's not even community based. It's more of like stereotyping or just like. It's very Nazi-ish for me. Like I don't like it. Yeah.
So in my latest work, yeah, Dopamine Dash, explore how really powerful social media is. Of course, it connects us, inspires us, it gives us a voice, but same time, it can turn our engagement, our attention into something like it's tied to metrics. It's like making our feel like our worth is tied to what do you call this? These digital currencies of validation, affirmation, something. So yeah. So this project. So basically, in the game, players literally chase this likes, love, laugh emojis while avoiding the angry ones. So I took the abstract mechanics of social media and turned it into a physical game. So ayun, like parang the more they play, the more exhaustive, and the more they see how social media play into this this addictive nature of these interactions. So, yun.
And what about you, Chris?
Yeah, so I suppose like there's definitely a huge shift in how I relate, and I think a lot of us relate to internet and a lot of the utopic ideals that we grew up, or at least that I grew up with, have sort of been taken over by just, I would say, just big business, right? Big tech companies, and more recently, this is not really related to any sort of specific cultural work that Tropical Futures is doing, but more specifically with freelance work that we're doing in the area of like biz and brand strategy. I've been going down the hole of a digital marketer, and really, I can say for the first, not for really for the first time, but as of late, I really feel like I live under the algorithm, or I live under the platform, almost like a Philippian existence, because my life more or less depends on the distribution of my content on the platform. And I'm speaking more specifically to like using some clients, and also like our own brand. If we sell merchandise, if we don't turn on Meta ad spend, our distribution is effectively cut off. And obviously these platforms are publicly traded companies, so they have to present, positive earnings per share to their investors. And it's sort of living through different, I think, social media changes through Web 1.0, 2.0, like BBS boards, forums, and eventually now we're, living in this sort of techno-feudal era where these tech companies essentially control a lot of our lives. So it's been a very jarring experience, I think, in terms of just like seeing like, oh, recently our account was sort of blocked because now security is run by AI, and effectively ads were shut down for this brand, and it was just like, oh, the world stopped, in terms of the distribution of the content of the brands. So it definitely, yeah, I think sometimes this sort of experience in power dynamics between the platform and ourselves. In this case, me being super submissive, right? I can't do anything. Like I'm at the will of some AI chatbot. I'm hoping I'm speaking to a person, but I don't think so. And the account is still locked. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I don't need to be like all a bit dystopic, but that's just sort of a recent experience, I think, with regards to technology and the community.
Yeah, all of our kind of practices seem to basically be kind of centralized around like the platform era. Facebook and Meta do seem to be directly targeted. I mean, Chris directly mentioned like their ad spend. And Tona, the Cambridge Analytica scandal was like a Facebook thing, right? And it's scary looking through social platforms and seeing and being able to download the data that they have on you and seeing these like vast lists of your interests, hobbies, demographics that you didn't even provide, but that these platforms and algorithms just extract out of you. We truly are further boxed in as people. I want to step away a bit from the platforms and algorithms and think a bit about the physicality of all of this. One thing I'm interested in is how your works, in attempting to kind of like combat the platformization of us all, try to physicalize and make explicit the invisible forces that underpin all our technologies, their negative socialities, the mechanisms that make them work. For instance, when Chris was initiating Art Dubai, you mentioned that digital technologies are kind of key to bridging digital and physical worlds. And of course, for the two of you, your practices take form into physical installations and works. Donna, your pieces and installations bring sculptural form to web logos and data sets like the globe piece that you had shared. And Keb, of course, your paintings are immense and can stand on their own, but you imbue them with this additional layer of digitality in life. And of course, the sensors and components and containers you use are, of course, physical. So, of course, I'm interested, how do each of you approach the physicality of the digital, the very real materiality of it all?
I guess there are like different ways, or there are different things that I want to make obvious or like make physical. One of them, I guess, connected to what I said earlier about black boxing is wanting to make evident how these things work. So, for example, I discovered through meddling on the internet the code, when you learn how to code, when you learn how to do machine learning, one of the first data sets you encounter is the iris data set. So it's a really beautiful, you sort flowers. So you train a machine learning model to sort flowers. So it seems pretty, diba? I didn't know that it was based on a skull size sorting set. So you know the links, like the oppressive links, I experience or we experience from new technologies, they trace back to psychology, they trace back to molecular biology, to segregation, that kind of thing. And I guess I also want to uh, make point out like the material cost of these software things. It's easy to categorize them as vapor. That's why I like using a lot of metal, a lot of concrete, a lot of very heavy monumental materials because technologies are actually driven by raw materials still. Like I think Silicon Valley, that kind of industry, is a bit farther, you know, from the Filipino experience. But the extraction of raw materials has been like going on since forever here, and I think something we can really feel, something that's like ever present and important to talk about too.
And what about you, Keb?
So for me, I always try to find balance between the traditional and the digital whenever I work. So I try to find ways that they could elevate their elements, their qualities. But to find that balance, what this? For example, in Dopamine Dash, I chose to paint the image instead of creating it digital entirely, because painting can hold our gaze like for there's a physical presence to it, right? There's an emotional aura that it emits, and compared to the digital, the fleeting nature and like rapid nature of the digital. So yeah, and the digital side naman enhances the experience by because the painting has features like exhaust systems, like pipes, and that produce this reacts continuously. So the digital layer of it just enhances for me, enhances the viewer's experience, not replacing it. So, yun. Yeah.
That's why it's augmented reality.
No. This is projected. Sorry,
projected.
sorry. No, this was video map. The game was video map onto the painting. So while so yeah, so the project was it's motion based. So there's a sensor in front of the painting. So whenever you move, it tracks your hand movements. So it's a very physical game that reflects the change. Pwede po. Sige. Kasi ang hirap explain pa. Yes, please, thanks. So that's my wife po. So yeah. So there's a sensor in front po. Tapos ayun. It tracks your hand. So yun. So yeah, I turned these our digital behaviors in the internet into physical ones. So like So viewers can reflect and engage and while having fun. Ganun yung goal ko talaga.
Yeah, and earlier you were speaking about how you're kind of like intentionally making people engaging with the piece exhausted physically. Like you can scroll on TikTok or on Instagram Reels forever, but then in here you just get tired eventually. So that's also part of it. And then Chris, also curious to hear your thoughts on the physicality of the digital. I mean, you designed spaces. Earlier you were thinking about internet infrastructure, which is, of course, very real, but generally hidden.
Yeah, I think for this question, I'll speak towards like maybe more from, I guess, like in the case of showing works, digital works, in the context of a traditional art fair or exhibition. I think there's been a huge phase shift in terms of the viability of collecting digital. And obviously, that is due in part to fairs like ArtFairPH, in terms of showcasing digital works and the possibility of collecting them. And I would say globally, a few years ago, we wouldn't see any sort of work at fairs, in particular new media. It was a fraction of sales. But nowadays, you see it as a growing medium in terms of more and more, like at fairs, post NFT blockchain hype. And I think especially with, I would say perhaps like, obviously like you have older generations of collectors collecting photography and video. However, I think with millennials and younger generations that have grown up with the internet, I think we can see more acquisitions of work, and there is more viability, I think, for digital artists in today's day and age in terms of whether it's commercial or it's actually producing their own work. And yeah, I would say like it's just the connecting from the screen to a physical installation. That sort of transmutation is always challenging, but I think as we continue to show more work and think about the challenges, in order to create immersive experiences or create sort of signifiers of the digital in a physical sort of manifestation, I think that continues to come to life. And then eventually, I think, obviously with things like AR and VR, it's been a mixed bag of adoption, but, as computing improves, we will see different operating systems come to life and, further adoption for some of these new ways of interfacing with the digital. So, I mean, it remains to be seen about widespread adoption. Obviously, everyone has a smartphone. So, but for the time being, we still have wall-bound or projector-based work, or I guess physical installation, sculpture-based work.
Okay, it was a bit rough for me as well, but then I think Chris in his curatorial practice was speaking about the challenges of bringing digital work into art fair spaces, all these physical venues. I think we're still learning how to like present screen-based work. A lot of NFTs and cryptos are distributed online. Okay, but from the fragments of what we heard Chris speak to, there was this speaking to the new and old. Obviously, we're all bringing these emerging technologies from AR to machine learning to projection mapping to traditional spaces, and we're still all employing very material and traditional mediums in our practices. Chris, in his space making and exhibitions, is often navigating very traditional art fairs and working with markets that are still unfamiliar with just like screen-based work. And Keb and Tona, you're both working with traditional mediums that were once revolutionary technologies in itself. Simultaneously, you're also working with AR and contemporary like practices. And in general, what we consider technology has changed drastically across time. First, the fire was considered a technology, the book, computers, and they still all are, but the colloquial definition of technology generally refers to these like small devices in our hands. Um, so between old and new, I'm curious to each of you, like how do you approach this bridging of old and new crafts in your practices?
I guess like I have this one work. It looks really new media. New media. I'll play it. So this work is one of a series of works. I used to call them the Mandies, but now they're like a series of fake women that I created based on a machine learning model that writes about these women, like biographies. So when I was working in an ad agency, I think it's a long time practice that they would make you create these fake personas, like target market personas. And they would be so oddly specific, like likes and dislikes, age, where you live, hair color even, or like exercise habits, stuff like that. But these would all be fake made up people. So I web scraped and then trained a model to create something out of that. I guess it's a combination of something old and pre-existing and something new.
Yeah. So in my case, for me, the key for me is intention. So I don't use technology just because I can do it. I use it to enhance experience, to add depth and meaning to the interaction between the art and the audience. So in Super Nardo, I made this game during the rise of Bitcoin. So, wala. Wala siya. Sige, yung isa na lang. Sige. Ay, hindi. Wala po yung Super Nardo. Opo, sorry. So Super Nardo is an AR game, platformer game, much similar with Super Mario. So I made this during the rise of Bitcoin when the world was fascinated with mining and collecting these digital tokens. So the old and the new. So it felt like it was the modern day gold rush. So this project, I exhibited this in San Francisco where gold rush basically happened. So it pretty much tied everything. So here, I made the chase of these digital tokens with into a game mechanic. So the goal of the game is to finish each level as quickly as possible, like mirroring how people like to invest and collect this as quickly as possible to pretty much gain their investment. So yeah, so I love bridging the old and the new worlds. Yeah, I like to like take polar like opposites and try to find the middle ground and yeah, try to explore there in between.
Yeah, could you speak a bit more to how you started painting and how you started thinking of blending it with games? Because earlier you did mention that your earliest games were like drawing mazes in your notebook. And I'm curious, like, did you start out making games or did you start out painting first? When did they start blending or converging?
Yeah, when I discovered AR, I didn't directly experiment with games. At first, I explored with just static images. So basically, I overlaid digital graphics onto my painting at first. Then I thought this wasn't enough because it's so parang gimmick lang yung dating. So I moved into video art na. So the effect, basically, we played a video art over on top of the painting in AR. So it felt like the painting is moving, parang Harry Potter, parang ganun. So yeah, then it hit me. What if the audience could actually affect or interact the artwork? What if they weren't just seeing something new, like yung AR may lumalabas na? What if they were actually affecting what's happening inside? Parang dun. Then yun, parang it went full circle with me na I was designing this mazes in elementary school. Now I'm painting it and I'm developing AR game alongside with it. So yun, parang yun yung naging history.
So it started with painting and then overlaying video and then
The
putting-
process. You're asking about the process, right?
Or like, did you start painting first, or did you start making games first?
No, it's simultaneously. I'm working
Simul-
back and forth. So the process is very, it's a battle, actually. It's very confusing at first because the constraints of like painting, for example, if you painted the game first and then you encounter like game mechanics that are not working, I go back to the painting and try to edit the painting, then back to the game again. So the back and forth of developing the traditional digital side of my projects is, yeah, it's very time consuming. Very, yeah.
And Tana, going back to you, I know you spoke a bit about the apparitions piece. Could you speak a bit more about like, I guess like the old or the traditional in your like in
the
your
traditional
process?
media, like
Yeah.
traditional. So I do printmaking, like 19th century intaglio printmaking. So it's a very old form where you engrave or etch a metal plate, and then you apply oil paint, and then you print it. Yeah. So it's typically done with copper, and you usually do it via Edinburgh etch, like you would have an oil ground, like traditional printmaking. But now I use steel. Sometimes I use, like, aside from the hand-drawn elements, I would like borrow someone's laser engraver and add some stuff. Or I would try to etch at home, which is very toxic. I would not recommend it. Like chemically etch it at home with like silk screen negatives and stuff. Yeah.
And have you always been kind of like using digital techniques in your work, or did you also have like an aha moment with like Keb where?
I guess so. I didn't even know you could have art as a career before, like legit. I think I was drawing and painting since I was a kid, and I didn't even think like, oh, you can have this as a job, diba? So my job talaga before is advertising. So it's not a choice. Like, what do you use when you're in an ad agency in your creatives, right? You have Photoshop, you have Illustrator, you have Premiere, like your usual digital software. So I guess when I started showing, like, wow, showing art as an artist, I was already using these things. So I had, it was seamless. It was just, I just never thought twice about using it in my work.
Yeah, and it's interesting how some of the work you showed, like obviously the stone tablets, kind of harks back to like really ancient times.
Yeah.
And then, okay, the artists have shared their thoughts about old and new. Chris, you spoke a bit about it, but then could you speak more about the challenges of presenting like very new forms of art and new mediums to these older spaces per se? I know you shared a bit about their perspectives, but maybe you can speak a bit more and we can hear you better this time.
Yeah, so I think from an archival perspective, media is challenging, to say the least. There's a lot of debates going on right now about, if you run a certain artwork on an emulator versus maybe the original hardware, or if you're running, a recording or a digital file of a work that was based on a physical sort of memory, more like a VHS. So there is like, and there will continue to be these challenges. I mean, when you look at it from a technological perspective, like you think about paper, we have if you're showing that work again and you're not don't have the proper hardware to present the codec, or you're not restating the file, or these are all challenges. And I think even from a collector's point of view, it's just I think the nature, because of the complexity with some of these technologies and perhaps how fragile they are. And then I think circling back to an earlier question, because of certain technologies, the upkeep of that technology or the access, is can be limiting at certain times, right? Being able to jailbreak a VR set so you can maybe show an older VR type of work, or manually uploading that. And I think that's kind of a field too, where some of these some of the ways that some of the work is published may or may not last, depending on the system of infrastructure underneath it. So it presents an interesting question to collectors, archivists, and institutions about how to best preserve some of these works, especially works that perhaps exist on servers. You have to create your own personal cloud. And I think most institutions are doing that now, where they're creating their own personal clouds or online space, so they can upload and preserve certain types of media work. So I mean, we'll see as we keep accelerating with more and more technology. Just in the space of media, there's so many, even in this talk, as you mentioned, there's so many different mediums, media that the artists have engaged with. I think it becomes a increasingly complex challenge, but I think something that we will learn and grow with.
So one of the tensions between old and new that Chris was pointing out was about preservation and documentation. I think we've learned a bit more how to preserve paintings and print work, but how do you preserve a file? Can these endure? They feel a lot more ephemeral. Chris was mentioning things about codecs being deprecated. A lot of technological works that were produced in just the past decade or so are now hard to access. And perhaps it's the interesting promise of Web3 that make it a bit easier to replicate materials and create redundancy and make it a bit easier to preserve files, but these are all things that the field is still working out and is something that we can hopefully develop better infrastructures for. I'm going to ask the artists some single questions and then we can move on to Q&A after. But for Tona, you were talking a lot about these kind of research data sets that group people into these really rigid systems, and you think a lot about identity, portraiture, and representation in your work, making figures in a lot of them, working with data sets of different scales, literally showing JSON files. Can you speak a bit about how you think about just bodies and representations and identity?
I guess I'm going to bring up something I'm working on. It's called so far the title of the series of works are called Double Takes. So there's, for example, when I was having my residency in Project Space, care of Ateneo also, Leslie de Chavez was telling me about the hero Hermano Pule. So there are 4 portraits of him, and no one knows which portrait is real. And we also live in an era of deepfakes where we don't know if that portrait of a person doing something is real or not. So I guess I'm interested in that kind of negotiation or that kind of tension, because I think we live in an era where most things are like that and you don't know what's real or what's not anymore. Or you know it's real but you can't figure out if it's truthful or it's not nice or stuff like that. Yeah. I guess with the body also, I'm interested in how to maintain these technologies. You still have humans Yeah, actually, a lot of AI work is library work before. I don't know how it is now, but before, like to train an, I don't like the term AI, but anyway, to train an AI model, you have to collect like 1,000 images and then crop them all to the same size, fix the lighting in the same. It's like library work. It's a very human, labor-intensive endeavor. And I think even like chatbots, with them saying like the chatbot, is it a human being or not? You know, these are still very human, body-based things that we're doing. Yeah.
And on Keb's side, um, I'm curious for you to speak a bit more about Dopamine Dash, which is a self-developed game that you made about these feedback loops, obsession with social media. It's a gamified kind of painting, and it comments on these very same cycle itself. How do you think about almost like obsession, immersion, and just like the general state of gamification of things in your work?
So what I'm trying to always do, because painting and gaming is like two different things, right? So I try to blur the line because painting, just what I mentioned earlier, that it has this physical presence. It holds like your attention in very passive. It it can pull you into its world by just by the heaviness of a stroke of brush stroke or texture of the paint. While gaming, on the other hand, engages you in ways like through mechanics, through like reward system. So I'm fascinated with the ideas, with these ideas, and yeah. So yun. So I try to blend these both worlds. So yeah, parang ganun.
Can we move on to audience Q&A, if anyone has?
So we have a question from the audience, an artist who doesn't want to disclose their identity. This is from Gemini AI. So how you touched on this a bit. So how do your lived experiences manifest in the aesthetic qualities and thematic concerns explored within your digital works? Tona, you talked a bit about advertising. Keb, you talked a bit about like the mazes. So I guess a bit on your lived experiences and how it manifests in your work.
So as I mentioned earlier, I watch a lot of like bad horror movies and bad sci-fi movies. I also read books, like a lot of sci-fi books. So I guess like what does that say about me? I'm praning. So then also I like that kind of tension, di ba, with the work. And I also like fashion magazines, like glossy images, cheesy romantic images. So when I choose to exhibit work, my personal bias when sorting through all the data I've amassed is to show something like that, like along those lines. Yeah.
Sa akin naman, my works are like way of processing my inner thoughts, syempre. But because my social skills are not that great, I'm very awkward, stutter a lot. So I think this deficiency pushes me to create, to connect visually. Because, yeah, alam niyo, video game. So I spent a lot of hours indoors. So I made friends along the way, syempre. Pero, ayun. So so I resort to creating images. Then when I discovered AR and I learned to code, my message. So this technology adds layers na for the audience to like answer. So it became sort of a dialogue na yun na syempre people always try to connect, and this is I think my best way to connect or to get my message across. Parang ganun.
How about Chris?
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I suppose. Yeah, I mean, similar to the other responses, just drawing reference from lived experience in my day to day. I would say like explorations around perhaps just in this case identity in terms of looking at oneself in relation to the power structures in the digital, and beyond that, also looking at perhaps climatic themes that surround the work. And I think, in particular, I mean, hence, tropical futures.
Okay, I think Chris is too stunned to speak. Um, okay, whoever asked this question, I hope it was answered. So, do we have another question from the audience?
You guys probably have a status now as being digital artists, but at the same time, do you find it overwhelming or do you find it motivating working with a technology that changes daily?
Sometimes it's annoying. So actually, I'm not. I don't want to claim that I'm a digital artist most of the time because sometimes I can't even get our printer at home to work. I just really learn how to code when I have to, like when I need it for a work of art. But there was this one. Something happened recently that really made me annoyed. I had a lot of style guns before, very early form of AI. From 2019. So I've been making them 2017 to 2019. And of course, I don't have the hardware to run these heavy models in my computer. So you'd rent like a cloud from someone like Google or another platform. And suddenly, like, Colab stopped supporting the model. So I just woke up and I couldn't access my own work, like from those 2 years. So that sort of thing happens because you don't own the hardware and you don't know what to do when it becomes obsolete. So similar to the things I think Chris was trying to say a while ago. It's a lot of problems with codecs, with files. It's also nice though. I like working with new technologies also because I think it's like you can stage so many things as an artist. That's the leeway, right? That's the good thing about making art. Everything's fictional. You can do whatever you want. So that's why I like working with them too.
Yeah, so yeah, we have to adapt like regularly because, especially in my case, I tried to work with AR at first, but I tried to move away temporarily because um, I found out that no. So for example, that in Dahlia, the gameplay, it's an AR game, so the gameplay is too deliberate. So players have to point the camera onto the painting like periods of long periods. So for me, this breaks immersion. So I had to adapt, and then so every project I made is it's an reaction to the previous one. So I try to look for the successes and failures of each one and try to adapt. So in the next project, I made it totally standalone game without the AR, and I found out that this move immerses the players more. So yun. So I try to adapt lagi because my goal is to connect naman eh. So yun. So I try to find new ways na ma-engage and to lift their interactive experience as well as delivering my message in a meaningful way, parang ganun.
I would like to ask, I have an art gallery, and I have almost 25,000 artwork encoded. A lot of my new manager told me that I should put all my database into the clouds. I am extremely scared because it took me 50 years from 95 to today to encode all the works. So first of all, I'm scared that this data may be stolen, that they can be hacked, and I would like to know, do I still have to keep my normal database? Because my database is not attached to any Wi-Fi. It's pure by itself because of the scare of hacking. Do you suggest that going forward with a new technology, we, a gallery, a museum, should keep such a historical, mythological, because you talk about years and years and years of history, into the clouds?
I'm actually not sure. But there's something called a NAS server. Maybe like a NAS server.
Yeah, but the technologies changes so often.
Yeah.
Like
That's true.
before, when I look at my album with my photograph, you know, they're still intact, they're still there. The slides, yes, changes have moss, but my photographs are still good. Now with technology, every year there is a new stuff. So how do you keep this photograph, these images, the history secure that can be useful to the history of the life of artists? How?
I have no idea.
Does Chris have thoughts, as Chris is a curator,
Maybe.
and a gallerist?
Chris.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great question. It's something I ask myself all the time. But I think it depends on the trade-off between obviously personal privacy and having convenience. So, I mean, if you have all the time in the world and technical know-how, you can create your own cloud, but that's a lot of work, it's a lot of upkeep. I have sort of a nihilistic opinion on this, where I think, our data, sure, it's stolen, and in the singular form, it's important to us, but we sort of dissolve as a person and as a being when the data is uploaded into these large data sets. So I wouldn't be worried about like operational security, like securing your files. I think the important thing for someone is, the preservation of these images or memories or archives. So in this case, I think, unfortunately, going with some sort of online storage service that has redundancy, meaning that when you upload it to the cloud, hopefully that company doesn't go out of business, but they have so many servers around the world. You're not going to lose it because your hard drive failed, but it's happened to me before, where I think it's happened to everyone here, where it's like the computer, messes up, I can back it up, and then it kind of feels like a whole chunk of your memory is just been erased, because you can't retrieve those files anymore. So yeah, just to sum it up, it's like personal privacy versus convenience. It's something that someone would have to weigh up before uploading a database into some sort of cloud service. I hope that helps.
Just very quickly, just thinking about the challenges that you went through with how you produce the work, what are like the resources, the support, or the tools which other companies or organizations or galleries can help other digital artists in this country thrive in creating more digital works for the Philippines?
A lot of it is funding. I mean, it would really help if the work is supported, from the creation stage to the installation stage. Because I think not a lot of the art market, there's a very small amount of people from the market who buy that kind of work. And it's hard when you're young, you're just starting to make these kinds of work. You really feel like you're taking a big risk, choosing to make it. You can find a way to DIY, DIY or die, right? You'll have tech problems forever. I think no matter how much I prepare, I always had tech problems. Like everything's done na, but the connections like messed up or something. So that can be helped by talking to other people, collaborating with people. But I think funding the work and funding the progression, or even like just the idea stage, is important. Yeah.
So yeah. So for me, honestly, that's why I blend digital with traditional, because we have like very, like Donna said, very small amount of people support like digital art here. So that's why I resort to painting. So I could I can keep sustaining my gaming dreams. So that's why I paint. Parang ganun. So yeah, so it's very hard to produce works here like pure digitally. Yeah, so I always keep that in mind. Then I have to sustain myself, diba? Para so I can keep doing my work. So yeah, that's my my ano ba, trick to keep doing digital layers works.
And then Chris, what does the digital scene need in the Philippines?
I mean, similarly, that sweet techno capital, more digital companies allocating their CSR to supporting digital artists would be great. But I will say globally, it is hard to survive and produce work as a digital artist outside of that 0.001% artist that has made it. Generally speaking, it's hard. Most of my friends that are practicing artists, even ones that are represented, still are working at like a tech company or a media company. So out of all the mediums, I would say this is probably one of the most challenging because from just different structural points of view. Like obviously you have the adoption of technology and the access to technology, which is hard. I mean, thankfully, like UP has a great program with their Fab Labs, so that does give some sort of access to technology across the archipelago. But outside of that, the market is, there are digital collectors, and there are more now than there were like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's still just maybe 1 or 2 percentage points of total sales in art, or maybe in global art sales, I would say, yeah. You can fact check me on that. It's probably around there, maybe it's less, I don't know. But it's hard to sustain the practice. There's no doubt about that. Whether you're in Manila, or you're in Berlin, or you're in New York, it's hard, and institutional support is always appreciated. So I'll just emphasize that again, in techno capital, like startups or pre-existing big tech companies. So it's a challenge. So anyone that's doing it and doing it professionally for a living, they're one of the few that made it out of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands that dropped out and didn't. So it's doing it right.
Yeah, thank you. A myth seeks to explain, myths seek to endure, but from the goings of this talk, it sounds like we face a lot of lossiness, we face a lot of glitches and technical issues. We're continuously losing access to our own work, our own data, our own selves. Narratives are always being rewritten. It seems like how enduring technology can be is still quite murky when it's rapidly progressing. So perhaps we need better infrastructure, perhaps we need more redundancy, perhaps we need true obsession with preserving ourselves and our identities. Okay. Thanks everyone for listening and for your time and for bearing with all the difficulties.
Thank you, Chia.